The wide receiver market just got a whole lot more interesting. While big names like Stefon Diggs and Cooper Kupp just found new homes, the Denver Broncos quietly watched from the sidelines. Or did they? Reports are now surfacing that the Broncos had at least some level of interest in these star wideouts, but with those options now off the table. In today's video, I'm breaking down all the latest whispers, price tags, and possibilities surrounding Denver's receiver situation and whether or not a big move is still on the horizon. Let's dive in. What's up, buddies? Welcome back. If you are new here, make sure you hit the subscribe button. We cover all AFC West news here on this channel. So with those options off the table, Denver might turn its attention to other free agent receivers. Mike Kliss, who does a great job covering the team for 9 News, recently wrote in an article that there are still 2 available receivers on the free agent market who could make sense for the Broncos, Keenan Allen and Elijah Moore. I want to break down both of these receivers because, like I said, Denver didn't necessarily strike out on Kupp or Diggs, but if they had some level of interest in them, those players were simply priced way outside the Broncos' comfort zone. Diggs is making a little over $21 million per season for the next 3 years, and Kupp is making $15 million per season over the same span. I predicted earlier that Kupp wouldn't end up in Denver, and instead might go to the Seahawks, and sure enough, that's exactly what happened. Now, I'm going to stand by my view that Denver is not going to make a big, expensive wide receiver signing or acquisition. But if a player's asking price drops to a certain number, something the team didn't expect to happen a month ago, there could be interest. For instance, a month back, the Broncos may have ignored certain players because they thought those guys would command $10+ million. Denver didn't want to spend that. But if the price comes down, okay, maybe now there's a conversation to be had. So while I don't expect a major splash, as free agency moves further away from its opening frenzy, player prices inevitably go down as money dries up elsewhere. That's when teams like Denver might emerge from the shadows and make a move. Let's start with a familiar AFC West foe, Keenan Allen, former 3rd-round pick by the Chargers back in 2013. Quick Chargers fun fact: with Joey Bosa now heading to the Bills, there are officially no players left on the Chargers roster who played in San Diego. Kind of the end of an era there. Last year, Allen played for the Chicago Bears, and it wasn't a great season for him. You could chalk that up partially to age, but he played really well the year before that. I'm not entirely convinced that a few months off season suddenly aged him dramatically. I think Keenan Allen's down year in 2024 is more a reflection of how poorly the Bears coaching staff used him. They went through multiple offensive play callers, and none seemed to understand how to effectively utilize a veteran like Allen. You'd think after 13 years in the league, teams would know what he does well. But apparently the Bears didn't. That's part of why they fired Shane Waldron before even reaching the halfway mark of the season. Let's not forget what Allen did in 2023. Over 100 receptions, 1,200 yards, 7 touchdowns. And that was in just 13 games. Sure, he might not be a full 17-game player anymore. He hasn't played all 17 games in each of the last 4 seasons. But if you can get 13 games and 1,200 yards out of him for maybe $10 million, that's a signing I could get behind. I don't think Denver needs to go out and sign a big-name wide receiver. I don't believe it should be a priority early in the draft either, unless someone they really love just happens to fall to them. I'm more confident in this receiver room than I think most Broncos fans are, but even I can admit, if Keenan Allen comes at a bargain and plays like he did just 2 seasons ago, that sounds like a solid investment. You've got the emergence of Devaughn Vele, Marvin Mims, and Troy Franklin, all entering their 1st or 2nd year. Add to that Courtland Sutton's 1,000-yard, 8-touchdown 2024 season. Sure, this room doesn't have fantasy football darlings from 3 years ago like Diggs or Kupp, but that's okay. I see this as an ascending group. I'm not really interested in pulling a 31-year-old off the street and having him take snaps away from younger, thriving, developing players, just because Allen or Diggs or Kupp were great once upon a time. But Allen might actually fill a need that's missing in this receiver room. Not a tight end, obviously not his position, but perhaps another X-receiver, someone who can line up on the outside. Allen is not a guy you send on deep go routes. You've got Mims and Franklin for that. But why not someone who can complement Sutton, or at the very least, provide depth in a similar role? That's what Allen has done throughout his career in San Diego and later in Los Angeles. So I'd be on board with something like a 1-year, $10 million contract. Anything higher than that, and I'm probably out. Honestly, even at $10 million, I'm talking myself into it a bit. Because I do like the current room. But at the end of the day, if I open my phone and see a notification from Adam Schefter saying the Broncos signed Keenan Allen to a 1-year, $10 million deal, my reaction wouldn't be disappointment. I'd say, okay, I like that. Let's see how it plays out. If it doesn't work, the Walton Penner Group is out $10 million. Not my problem. So what do you think? Do the Broncos need to add another receiver? Maybe not for a major role, but for depth, like the Josh Reynolds signing last year? Let me know in the comments. Give me a yes or no if you feel like Denver needs to add another receiver. Now, let's talk about the other name mentioned, Elijah Moore. He played the last 2 seasons with the Cleveland Browns, and he was a second-round pick in 2021 out of Ole Miss. You might best remember him from the Egg Bowl, where he had a certain dog-like celebration in the end zone against Mississippi State. Moore is still young, just turned 25. In his career, 200 receptions, 2,100 yards, and 9 touchdowns over 4 seasons. The most disappointing thing with Moore is the lack of touchdowns. When the Browns traded for him, they did a second and third round pick swap with the Jets, expecting more production than they got. Over the past 2 seasons, Moore has had over 100 targets in both years, so clearly he can get open and get the ball. But he only has 3 touchdowns combined over those 2 years. You could blame some of that on the Browns' instability at quarterback, Deshaun Watson, Jameis Winston, and others. But still, as a second-round pick, you hope a guy can rise above those issues. As for how Moore fits in Denver, I like him to a degree, but I do wonder how different his role would be from Marvin Mims. Even in Cleveland, they didn't seem to know how to use him. Sometimes the Browns tried using him as a scat back or Swiss Army knife in the backfield, giving him handoffs. That didn't really work. Then they shifted him back to a traditional receiver role, which saw a bit more success. There are shades of Moore's game that remind me of Mims. Mims is faster and more of a true gadget player. The Browns tried to make Moore into that, and it didn't work. I don't think Moore will thrive as a traditional X receiver, battling DBs for 50-50 balls. But I also don't think he's a pure gadget guy either. Still, I think Moore can be successful in the league. He just needs to be in the right system. Sean Payton is a smart coach who's had success with receivers who weren't top picks or big signings. I could see him looking at Moore not as a bust, but as someone who was simply misused in Cleveland. Maybe he believes he knows which buttons to push to bring out Moore's potential. A 1-year, $6 million deal? I'd be open to rolling the dice. He brings speed, and teams always want more speed. Courtland Sutton and Devaughn Vele aren't exactly burners. Mims and Troy Franklin have some wheels, but more speed wouldn't hurt. I'd trust Sean Payton to find a spot for Elijah Moore in this offense. So yeah, while Keenan Allen and Elijah Moore aren't exactly headline-grabbing names like Diggs or Kupp, they might actually be smarter fits for what Denver's trying to build, especially if the price is right. Sometimes it's not about chasing stars. It's about finding the right puzzle piece that just fits. Now, I want to hear from you. If it came down to Keenan Allen or Elijah Moore, which one would you want the Broncos to sign, and why? Are you banking on experience, or are you betting on untapped potential? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and let's get a good convo going. If you enjoyed this breakdown, be sure to hit that like button, and don't forget to subscribe for all the latest AFC West news and analysis. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.